Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Eric Salahub. I am an philosophy faculty at Front Range Community College. I'm an instructional coach, and my colleague here is Carrie Mitchell. Carrie, you
Hi,
want to?
everybody. Yeah, sure. I'm Carrie Mitchell. I'm English faculty at Front Range Community College. I'm also serving as the other instructional coach at the Larimer campus, along with Eric. And Eric and I have also been teaching for quite a while at Front Range. I've been there for about 15 years. Eric's been there for more than 20, I believe. We've both taught a lot of residential classes, hybrid classes, online classes. And so that's who we are.
We've been working really hard over the last month, talking to our colleagues about what's going on right now, moving classes online. And so we had originally planned a slightly different keynote. But due to what's happening, we've retooled and kind of on the fly developed this keynote experience that we're going to talk about today, surviving and thriving online with active learning. And so we are super happy that you're here with us. Just know that we're at home in our makeshift home offices with the technology that we happen to have with us when all of this stuff started. So hopefully the audio and video will be okay. We're going to try to be our real selves. We're not aiming for perfection. Our goal here is to offer you a keynote experience that will start with this video that you're watching. There will be 3 pre-work videos that will lead us up to this just-in-time keynote presentation that will be held noon to 1 on April 17th. So what we're hoping you're going to do is watch this video, watch the other 2 pre-work videos, add comments to the YouTube videos. Carrie and I will be watching the comments, seeing what you think, looking at the questions you pose, the examples, the criticisms, and then on Friday the 17th, we will do a just-in-time keynote, trying to answer questions, talking about the cool things, the ideas that you presented. And so please do come back on Friday, April 17th to this YouTube channel and watch the keynote that we will basically design based on the input that you offer us. So we are going to start with this first video on expanding your understanding of active learning and its relevance to student success in online learning. Video 2 is really going to talk about the current situation we're in, and video 3 is going to look forward to the next few semesters and think about some strategic planning dealing with those unknowns.
So we would like to start by talking about what we like to call our best class ever, because this story really helps us illustrate how it was that we sort of stumbled upon active learning. And it's been so impactful for us and for our teaching that we like to share this story just so you can see where we're coming from and why it is that we're so passionate about active learning, especially active learning in the online environment. So Eric and I have long been teaching a learning community together that mixes my English composition, English 121 course, with his ethics, philosophy 112 course. And we had traditionally taught this course residentially in 2 separate classrooms side by side. And at one point, probably 6 years ago or so, we were invited to move our learning community to the online environment. And we were skeptical as to how well that would work, but we decided to take on the challenge and see what we could do. And it was incredibly challenging for us because what we realized when we moved our course online is that we were dissolving a lot of the boundaries that had existed before. So when we taught it residentially, I had my classroom and Eric had his classroom. I had my outcomes, Eric had his outcomes. I had my papers and projects, and Eric had his exams. And so we were able to kind of do what we had always done, just side by side. When we put our course online, we created one course experience for students, one shared course experience. And what that meant was that students would take this class in one online classroom, one D2L shell. They would get one grade book. And so everything that Eric and I we're going to incorporate it in the class had to be something we agreed on. We needed to agree on shared outcomes. What do we both care about? We had to scrap the old assignments that we used, the old major exams and essays, and come up with a new set of assignments that would capture both the ethics outcomes and the English outcomes. This was really hard work. It meant that we had to let a lot of things go that we cared about, a lot of things that we had habitually brought into our class semester after semester. But what we found after the first time we ran this course online is that our students did so well. They did the best thinking and the best writing that we had ever seen in our decades of teaching, both compared to what our residential learning community had been like and compared to what any online class had been like that we had taught. This was the best class ever. We felt really lucky. And so we kind of just chalked it up to getting lucky with a great group of students. But what we found was that semester after semester, running this new learning community on class, it would produce more great thinking, more great writing. Our students were outperforming our expectations semester after semester. And so finally, Eric and I said, we have to do some analysis and figure out what's going on here. And that was about the same time that we both became very interested in active learning pedagogy. We started researching what is active learning. And what we found was that we had unknowingly captured a lot of the elements of active learning in this classroom. And so that's what was working for us. We had incorporated some of the design and facilitation elements that we were learning about in active learning. Probably one of the most important was letting students do the work and not relying on ourselves to convey and transmit all the information by standing up at the front of the classroom. In an online class, you don't really have the same opportunities to lecture that you do in a residential course. And so without being aware of this at first, our students were thriving in this course because we were not standing at the front of the room doing all of the hard work for them. We were designing activities and experiences for them to do the hard work that allowed them to showcase all of that learning they did on the assignments that we asked them to complete. And so that was our best class ever. The reason we are sharing this with you is because it's what started us off on our active learning journey. And we actually think that some of the discomfort that we went through when we were creating this course mirrors a lot of the discomfort that we're all feeling right now as we're being forced into a new situation and we're having to get rid of things that we've long done and been familiar with, and we're having to try new things and use new technologies. While it does feel very scary and overwhelming, it also presents a very exciting opportunity for us to take some steps in the right direction when it comes to student learning. So before we dig in any further, we're going to ask you to stop, think, and write, do a little reflection here. We want you to think about how learning works. And so let's start with something small. Name something that you're good at. You can type this in the chat box, or you can just jot it down on a piece of paper if you're watching this from home. Name something that you're good at. Think about the fact that you weren't always good at this. You weren't born good at this, whether it's hula hooping or baking, or skiing, or being a good listener. Whatever it is that you're good at is something that you needed to cultivate. And so how did you become good at it? What was the process like for you to obtain that skill, for you to arrive at a place where you could say, yeah, I'm actually pretty good at this? So we'd like you to actually pause this video, go ahead and take a few minutes to actually think about this and contribute some of your ideas.
So hopefully you paused and either wrote on a piece of paper, or perhaps you were brave and shared out to the chat or to the comments and let everyone else know. Carrie, do you want to talk about what you're good at?
Yeah, sure. I always liked what I think about is Zumba. It's a type of fitness dance. It's definitely something I had to work really hard to become good at. I felt really foolish the first time I went to a Zumba class. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I have spent hundreds of hours at this point doing Zumba fitness classes. And so I've arrived at a place where, yeah, I actually feel comfortable saying I think I'm pretty good at it. How about you, Eric?
Well, my go-to example is making pizza. So I'm the family cook. My wife cooks too, but I do most of the cooking. And I'm a pretty good pizza maker. And I think the reason I'm a good pizza chef is practice. I pretty much make pizza once a week, every week, for about the last 12 years. And so I haven't done the math in a while, but I think that's somewhere around 600 pizzas. And so I think similar to Carrie, lots of practice, lots of other kind of ingredients to learning that might have gone into that.
So we've done this little writing thinking exercise with many groups. We work with a lot of different groups on active learning, lots of different teachers. And it seems that no matter what skill or talent people identify as the thing that they are good at, whether it's welding or whether it's some kind of social emotional skill or whether it's juggling, no matter how small or big it is, there are always the same ingredients for learning. When people start to compare their process for how it is that they became good at whatever they're good at, we find that they start talking about the same things. And so everyone identifies that they had some kind of goal, something that they wanted to achieve. They will speak to whether or not they were intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. It may be the case that somebody says, I just really wanted to learn to play the guitar. I felt this strong passion. And other times people say, well, I didn't feel intrinsically motivated at all, but I knew I needed to get a job. And so I spent a lot of time working hard at becoming a good welder. And that was my extrinsic motivation. What all these things have in common is that people put in the effort and time to really practice, to spend the time actually doing the thing over and over again that they're trying to learn. This involves taking a risk because whenever we're trying to learn something new, especially if we're doing it publicly, we might fail, we might make mistakes. It's risky. We have to be vulnerable. It also involves trial and error because we're not going to get it right the first time. We probably won't get it right the 10th time. So we have to keep trying over and over again. Another important piece of the learning puzzle is getting feedback that may contain corrections in it. Is really fantastic, but if we're practicing the wrong way, we're really not going to get any better at what it is we're doing. And so we depend on that kind of feedback or correction. It could be feedback that we're getting from ourselves. Eric takes a bite of his pizza and he says, oh, this is horrible. The sauce came out really bad. I need to add more basil next time. So he's correcting himself and giving himself the kind of feedback that he knows he needs to do better next time. Sometimes the feedback is external. You know, my Zumba teacher at the end of a class, I may pull her aside and say, you know, I'm really having trouble with this particular move. Can you show me how to do it? So she might work with me and give me that feedback and correction. But it really doesn't matter what we're learning. All of these pieces seem to be the same. And so we would ask you to look back at whatever it was that you wrote about being good at and think about how these ingredients line up for you. Did you have a specific goal in mind? Were you intrinsically motivated to learn this? Were you extrinsically motivation? Where did the motivation for your hard work come from? How much effort and time did you put in? Did it involve taking a risk? Was there a certain amount of practice and trial and error? And what did the feedback look like for you? What form did that feedback come in? So take a few minutes now if you'd like to pause and just really think about that.
So Carrie, I will just add, maybe someone came up with an example of something they're good at where these ingredients don't apply. But I think with the hundreds of people we've worked with, we've never actually seen one of those examples. Whatever innate talents you were, born with, assuming those exist, you got better at whatever it is by using one or more of these ingredients, and probably most of them. Barry, I was thinking as you were talking, we've both been working with so many of our colleagues learning new technology skills over the last month. And I guarantee every single one of these, often this is an extrinsic motivation. We had to do it. And people have definitely been taking risks and trial and error and effort and time. And so we really do think that these are the key ingredients to learning. And I think, Carrie, one of the reasons our online class was the best class ever is, as you mentioned, we inadvertently built most of these ingredients into that online course design. And that's probably why our students did such good work.
I agree. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is active learning. We'd like to give you a sense of how we would define it. We have this fun slide here that says not sprinkles or icing. Quite often when we talk with colleagues or other teachers about active learning, the sense that those folks will have about what active learning is they think it's something that you add in to the course that you're already teaching, like you would put sprinkles on a donut or icing on a cake. And so they will say, I like to throw in some activities every now and then and define that as active learning. And while we certainly think that having engaging activities in class is an important part of active learning, Eric and I definitely see active learning as much larger, much broader than just throwing these things onto what you're already doing or adding sprinkles to a donut. And so let's talk about that broader perspective. We're going to say that active learning combines intentional design principles with research-based instructional strategies to attend to all of those ingredients of learning. So think back to that slide where we listed all of those things that need to be present for learning to happen. Active learning is made possible when the teacher is intentionally designing their course using research-based strategies around those ingredients to make sure that those ingredients are present for students so that their learning is real. Active learning, in other words, allows the teacher to set the stage for real learning to happen. Students are still the ones who need to do the learning. They need to do the hard work, the heavy lifting. But our job as teachers is to intentionally design and set the stage for that to happen. So here's another, go ahead, Eric, you can talk about this.
One of the things we do when we run our Active Learning Institute is we start off by having people look at various definitions of active learning, to think about what they already know, and to co-create definitions of active learning. And we just wanted to offer a sample. I won't read this. If you want to read it, you can pause. But just to give you a sense, there's no one definition of active learning, but it definitely involves getting students to do the work, having them do the hard work of thinking, and putting the teacher in the role of facilitator and designer. And so as we go through the rest of this video and the other videos, just realize there is no one definition of active learning, but it does involve designing around those ingredients for learning. We really see active learning as a holistic paradigm shift from pretty much what most, if not all of us, have been doing for years, and what we've been doing for the last 500 or 1,000 years. And that's what we call the knowledge transmission paradigm. And so when Carrie mentioned, we're really talking about something more than sprinkles on a donut, this is really what we're talking about. You can have a traditional lecture class where the teacher is up at the front of the room in the role of content expert, the sage on the stage whose main job is to pour knowledge into students' heads. The student's job is to pretty much be the passive recipient of knowledge, to sit out there and take knowledge in. It's mostly about the facts and the knowledge and the content of the course. And certainly you could sprinkle some active learning activities here, but that doesn't really make it an active learning course. This new paradigm is this holistic shift. Teachers become course designers, learner facilitators. Students have to take on the role of becoming learners, actually taking responsibility for their learning and doing the work. The course really shifts from a focus solely or mainly on the facts and the content itself to really thinking about what the outcomes and skills are that students are going to be able to learn. You know that based on our best class ever, we know that active learning works because we've seen the impact on our own students. We're not asking you to take our word for it. What we've seen in the research we've done is there is simply a ton of evidence that active learning is a very effective teaching and learning strategy. These are just two meta-analyses that were done in the early 2000s. They looked at hundreds of studies, and both of these meta-analyses conclude that active learning does work, and the impact on student learning is significant. One of the reasons that's probably true is active learning is really just another way of talking about brain-based learning. Learning is actually this physical process that is happening in our brains. Our brains work in certain ways. Memories are formed in certain ways. Memories are encoded. networks of memories form that allow us to recall quickly in a variety of contexts. And so one of the reasons active learning works is simply because it is attuned with the way our brains learn.
So we're going to leave you for this first video with another little piece of research, and we're just giving you a glance on this slide. You don't need to read all of this, but we just want to show you that there is quite a bit of research being generated right now around active learning and equity. And so what we know from the research that was done in the early 2000s, and even there's been quite a bit of research done before that as well, is that active learning is the way to go if we want to produce more learning, better learning, sustainable learning for all students. So we keep finding that over and over in the research. But this is really a neat finding. In more recent years, studies have been honing in on the equity aspect, looking at underrepresented minority students as well as women in STEM classes to see how active learning affects those populations. And the finding, which is really exciting, is that while everybody does better in an active learning model of teaching, underrepresented minority students and women in STEM classes do disproportionately better. And so this has just such huge impacts for those group of students that we know struggle the most in our classes. And so the research that we've looked at is very exciting around active learning. We're just showing you small snippets here, but if you're interested in more, you can reach out to us. We've read several books, we've looked at several studies. We'd be happy to send you some specific resources if you're interested. So this is just a sneak peek at where we're heading in our next video. You just took the time to watch the first video, and in this video, we were really trying to expand your understanding of what active learning is and think about why it's a relevant model for online learning. People will often ask us, does active learning work online? And we just smile broadly and emphatically say yes, because if you'll remember back to the start of this video, that is exactly where Eric and I discovered active learning. It was in online learning. It was in online teaching. And so absolutely, it can work remotely. It can work in traditional online classes. It can work in any modality. And we'll talk about that more later. So as we look ahead to pre-work video 2, this is where we're going to ask you to entertain the idea that active learning is the go-to framework for times like these, when we are in an immediate crisis management situation, specifically the COVID-19. Active learning is really the right step for all of us to be taking to sort of help us and help our students transition into these uncertain times.
So thanks everyone for watching, and since you're done with this video, there is no reason why you shouldn't take a short break and come back and watch pre-work video number 2. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.